Lieutenant, let's fly. What? That doesn't work for me? Okay, fine, whatever. Forget I said anything. Let's just do the review. Let's just do the review. Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's review for Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 1, titled Kobayashi, Maru, the famous Starfleet Academy test, which apparently still in the 32nd century, no cadet has ever figured out ahead of time that the test is rigged. They're all still fooled by it, even though in the 21st century they can't even make a Spider-Man movie without the entire plot being leaked on the internet instantly. But the information that the Kobayashi Maru is rigged is never leaked to the cadets. Anyways, I'm just joking around. I'm being very nitpicky. Let's jump into the review, but first a spoiler warning. If you have not seen up through a Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 1, then things will be spoiled for you, and I am so sorry for all of you outside of the US who wouldn't be able to see it unless you pirate it. Like, I can't encourage pirating, but, I mean, it's probably what I would do. I don't know. Anyways, if you haven't seen it, then you can't watch this video unless you want to be spoiled. So, let's start with my overall thoughts, and I thought that this was a pretty strong finale. It gives me hope for the season. But then again, last season I had a similar feeling, and I thought last season ended up being okay. There were a lot of things I liked about last season. It did take some steps forward. It made some improvements over the previous seasons, for sure, such as the fact that the burn was not all about Michael Burnham. Like, we could have something that's not all about Michael Burnham. I appreciated that, but it didn't take as many steps forward or as big of a step forward overall as I had hoped after last season's first episode. So this season, I thought it was a pretty strong opening episode, and there are a couple different ways I could see it going, and I'm going to talk about that as I go through my review. By the end of this, I will talk about what the show could do that I think would be good, and what I'm afraid it would do will be kind of repeating some of the mistakes it has made in the past. So I'll kind of talk about that. But as for this particular episode, I thought it was a really strong finale overall. There are a couple things that did bother me a little bit, well, which I'll also mention, but minor things mostly. I think that overall I quite enjoyed this episode and thought it was a very strong opening episode. It's not a great overall episode, but you got to look at opening episodes a little bit different. They're there to set up the season, to get the ball rolling, and I thought this was a very effective episode for that. So I quite enjoyed it, and I'm happy to have Discovery back on. I guess I'm glad that I live in the United States. Sorry, rest of the world. Okay, so I want to start with that. Let's start with that cold open. So that was very much a Star Trek feature film feel to it, and I can't remember if they may have done this last year too. I don't remember, but I felt like I was watching specifically a Star Trek feature film. Everything from just the way that it was shot, like the way the camera just whipped around the bridge, and when they got to engineering and they whip it around, and then Stamets has a little witty line, and then Adira comes in and has a little witty line. It's like, oh, we haven't seen these characters in a little while. This is what things are like for them now. Let's do this real. It just reminded me exactly of like a Star Trek feature film. I was thinking, like, what is this? Star Trek Discovery Insurrection? Star Trek Discovery Nemesis? Like, it just had the feel of a Star Trek feature film. And then as for the plot of it, that seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. And then I watched another review that did point out specifically which feature film this plot was like, and it is Star Trek Beyond, one of the J.J. Abrams films that I'm not super huge into, and I only saw that probably once, so it's not really stuck in my head, so I didn't remember that. But then when someone else mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, it's the plot of Star Trek Beyond, the same opening gag where there's a diplomacy gone horribly wrong. And all of this, I guess I'm kind of neutral about it. Like, I don't have strong feelings either way. Like, definitely didn't love it, but I didn't like really hate it or think it was terrible or anything. I actually just found it interesting. I was like, this is an interesting way to open the season. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, to be honest. But I will say I didn't love the gag of the diplomacy going wrong, and the fact that, I mean, shouldn't they? Did they not have ambassadors? Because I don't know. The Federation is just getting back on its feet. Maybe they don't have a lot of ambassadors. But why is Burnham and Book? Why is Book even there? What is Burnham saying to them? Like, okay, I am Captain Burnham of the Starship Discovery. This is my boyfriend. Like, why is he there? That's kind of weird. But I don't know. I actually thought it was kind of fun, a way to get us back to the swing of things. We've been away for a year, so let's get us back into discovery mode. It was fine. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. So now moving on. Actually, before I dive into the heart of the episode, let's talk about the Saru side plot, because it was there wasn't a lot of scenes. It was pretty short. So let's just kind of get that out of the way. First of all, I want to say I love the depiction of Kaminar in the 32nd century. I love that the Baul and the Kelpians now live in communion, and they kind of have this the council or whatever that they had. What it really reminded me of was an Enterprise with the what do you call those people? Why am I blanking on the name of the major bad guys in the in season 3 and 4? But how they had all those different species, and like you had the aqua species like swimming around in a tank. The Baul kind of reminded me of that for some reason. And Enterprise is actually shouted out in this episode. I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I thought that it was very cool. And that was very interesting, given what we saw happen in the 23rd century with that planet and where it has become. And they still, they bicker amongst each other and whatever, but they do have, this form of government that involves both of them. I found that very interesting. And it was interesting that they regarded Saru as an elder. So that was all of that was very interesting. And what we're getting here in this episode is basically the way that Saru inevitably returns to Starfleet, which we knew was going to happen. They kind of yada yada over his time with what's his nuts, the dude, the Burn dude. I forget his name. The guy who calls the Burn. They kind of yada yada over that. Totally okay with that. It's not something I felt the need to see on screen. We need to see Saru in Starfleet, where he belongs. It would be really boring as fuck if we were spending the whole season with him and that Burn dude. So I like how they did that. I like how he was just like, you know what? You've been amazing. You've been really helpful. I don't need you anymore. Go back to Starfleet. I thought that was a really good scene. I thought that was good, and that's our way to get Saru inevitably back into Starfleet. We've already seen him in the trailers wearing his captain's uniform. Now, we were wondering, how can he coexist with Captain Burnham? I think this episode told us how that's going to happen. I have a very strong theory on that, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so now I want to get more into the heart of the episode, but actually there's one more thing I want to get out of the way before I do that, is I just want to talk about the one scene that really annoyed me the most. It's a very short scene. It wasn't that big of a deal. It didn't ruin the episode or anything, but it really annoyed me, and I don't want to see them doing scenes like this ever again. And that is the scene when Burnham was in that little shuttlecraft thingy or whatever, and the top bust open, whatever. It looks like she's not gonna be able to breathe or whatever, and then they show her go, and her hair like flies away in slow motion, and it seemed to last for like a good solid 2 or 3 minutes. I'm sure it wasn't quite that long, but it seemed to go on forever. Like, and then when we returned to regular motion, like regular speed, then her helmet just comes on. She can breathe. She flies off. She's like, I'm fine. Like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Come on. Like, it reminded me of, I don't know, a movie that I wouldn't watch. Like, so I can't really cite it. It's like something that I would see on a trailer for like I don't know, a Transformers movie. I don't know what, Fast and Furious. I don't know, some movie that I would never watch because I hate scenes like that. Like, why would you do that? You're a Star Trek show. Stop it. Cut it out. No more of that. I don't want to see that ever again. But even though it seemed to go on forever, it was really a measly, minor little part of the episode overall. So it doesn't ruin the whole episode. I just don't want to see that ever again. So now let's jump in to more of the main plot of the episode, and let's start with the how the characters have ranked up or ranked down in some cases. So Tilly is not the first officer. It appears that Reese is the first officer. He was sitting in the captain's chair at the beginning of the episode when Burnham was down there with the butterfly dudes, repeating the Star Trek Beyond opening. Reese was in the captain's chair, and then later in the episode when Burnham goes off to do her thing, she says, Reese, you have the con. And so it appears that he's the first officer, and Tilly is not anymore. Tilly was always the acting first officer, and it was never meant to be long term, and she did suck at it. And I view that personally as evidence that Saru sucks as a captain, because it was dumb for Saru to make Tilly the first officer. She was not ready for it. She proved that she was not ready for it. She was no good at it. So she is not acting first officer anymore. That was a very temporary thing. I will strongly disagree with certain people who make a huge deal, and you know who you are, make a huge deal about Tilly becoming first officer. It was only temporary, and it would have bothered me if they made her first officer and she was good at it. That's why the Kirk thing in Star Trek Beyond, one of the many reasons why it's a million times worse, is because they make him from cadet to captain, and he's really good at it and becomes a legendary captain instantly. And if they had done that with Tilly, I would have been pissed. But they made her first officer, and she sucked at it, and then she's not first officer anymore, which is what should happen. Saru never should have made her the first officer in the first place, which means Saru is not a very good captain. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I have some things to talk about with Saru. I don't think he's a very good captain, and I think making Tilly first officer was idiotic. And now she's back to where she should be, and she is lieutenant. I am totally okay with her being lieutenant. I think that she deserves to be lieutenant. I disagree with people that say that Tilly is not a good officer. She has proven herself again and again and again. She should be lieutenant. Poor Harry Kim. I'm rewatching some Voyager episodes. So there's like the episode because Tom Paris had gotten demoted to ensign, and then so Janeway re-promotes him to lieutenant and leaves him a little box with one of those pips on his chair. And Harry Kim's like, hey, I didn't see any boxes on my chair. Poor Harry Kim. But I digress. Tilly deserves to be lieutenant. And not first officer. And Reese being first officer, I'm okay with that too. I don't think we need to emphasize the first officer. I think it's fine that Burnham is the main character. She leaves, hey, you dude, take the con. I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that the first officer needs to be emphasized. And he is called Commander Reese. I'm assuming that is Commander with the 3 pips. But Detmer is also called Commander Detmer, I notice. I'm assuming that's Lieutenant Commander Detmer. But everybody seems to have been promoted. So that's kind of cool. So now into this episode, I think I want to mainly focus on the dynamics between Burnham and the President President Laura Relic, something. The president. I'm just gonna call it president for now. I'll have her name down by next week. So my initial thoughts on this was that, oh no, here we go with the old Star Trek, the original series trope with the overbearing ambassador or commodore, or it just seemed to be, oh god, and she's gonna end up being the villain, and but actually by the end of the episode, I think there's hope that that's not going to be the case. I think that they have an opportunity here. Well, they already made the show, but if they did do it in a way in which it is not cliche, I will really like it. And I think there's a very big opening for that to happen. There's a lot of interesting exchanges between she and Burnham. Burnham's always calling her out for being a politician and lying to that dude about having been to his home planet or whatever. But you know what? It was effective. It helped calm him down. So, I don't know. Was it really ultimately a bad thing, what she did? I don't know. It's very interesting. So there's some nuance here. And particularly the big conversation that they have at the end when they talk about the Kobayashi Maru, the title of this episode. And I love that conversation because the president is talking about how she doesn't think Burnham is ready to be move up to be the captain of the Voyager J and whatever, because she doesn't know how to make the big decisions. She can't make the sacrifices. She always wants to save everybody, and she will put the needs of the few ahead of the needs of the many. I don't know how she knows that saying, but whatever. She must have watched Star Trek too. How else would she know about the Kobayashi Maru? Anyways, so she was telling Burnham this stuff, and is she wrong? I don't think so. She's made some pretty good points. Burnham always needs to put the weight of the world on her shoulders. That's absolutely correct. But to be fair to Burnham, the original Kobayashi Maru person there, Captain Kirk, was infamous for this. Captain Kirk always he even said it in Star Trek 3, right, flat out. The needs of the many or the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many. He always did that all the time. And as I said, I'm rewatching Voyager. Janeway will risk the entire crew for the fucking Doctor, who's a hologram, and do it several times over and not blink an eye. So I don't want anyone to think that only Burnham does this, because I would say every captain across all the Star Trek shows have done it at least once. Especially putting the needs of the main characters ahead of the needs of the many. But Burnham is definitely pretty bad at this, just like Kirk was. So maybe what we're going with here is that it's the 32nd century now, so the captains need to be better than that now at this point. It's 1,000 years later, we got to be a little better than that now. So what I want to see out of this is I want to see, first of all, the president not to be a villain. I want there to be continued nuance. She is kind of overbearing. She does lie. She is manipulative, but she's also kind of right. And I want there to be some nuance. I don't want her to just end up being like a straight up villain. So I want that to continue. I saw that in this episode, and I would like to see that continue throughout the whole season. And then also, I want to see that line set up some character development from Burnham, and I want her to have to make a hard decision. Maybe we lose a main character. Most of those so-called main characters never have any lines anyways, so maybe we lose another one of those. Maybe Detmer goes, or Reese, or whoever, because Burnham has to make a hard decision that the president said she's incapable of making. I think this is Chekhov's hard decision. Like, she has to now, because the president just said she's not capable of doing it. So now Burnham has to do that. this season. And if she does, that would be legitimate character growth because the president is absolutely right. Burnham is not able to do that. So I want to see that character growth. I want to see that character development. I want to see this continued nuance between the president and Burnham, not the stereotypical TOS trope of the overbearing ambassador who goes on the ship and tries to tell the captain what to do. I don't want to see that. I want to see this continued nuance, which is what I did see in this episode, which I really liked. So I want that to continue for the whole season. So we'll see if that happens. I think the show will be much better if they are able to pull that off. Okay, now quickly let me circle back around to what I was talking about earlier with Saru and how I think he will re-enter Starfleet. Because it has to do with this conversation that Burnham was having with the president, where the president is talking about this new position that will open up with Voyager J and how they're going to do the new prototype for the Spore Drive. And, well, first of all, shouldn't they be further ahead in the alphabet than J at this point? And it's like 1,000 years later. I feel like they should be at least at N or O at this point. But I don't know. Maybe ships last longer. I guess if each Voyager lasted 100 years, that would work. Okay. Anyway, sorry, tangent. So that's going to be Saru's position, right? I mean, that Saru is going to be offered the captainship of the Voyager J, but still be working closely with Burnham. We still see them on the Bridge of Discovery together, but that's going to be Saru's job, right? I feel like they wouldn't mention that if a main character wasn't going to take that job. Again, I think Saru sucks as a captain, not just because he promoted Tilly, but also he just never made the right decision. He was never very good. He was good at giving speeches. That's about it. He wasn't a good captain. I'm going to say, based on this one episode, I already think Burnham was a better captain than Saru. She was on top of things. She was like making the hard decisions really quickly. She knew what she was doing. Much more than Saru does. I think Saru sucks as a captain, but the show is pretending like he's a good captain, so he's going to get that captainship. That's what I think. But we'll see what happens. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this side plot with Book and how he goes back to visit his brother and nephew. I mean, they weren't real brothers, but brother. Because this appears to be tied directly to the main plot of the season, the main obstacle that they have to overcome, whatever you want to call it. It's this gravitational pull, which also was tied into the plot with that space station that they went to rescue. There was also some sort of gravitational pull, and I believe it was Reese who pointed out, like, whoa, that's nowhere near that space station. Book's planet is nowhere near that space station, and it's experiencing the same phenomenon. So first of all, super sad that Book's homeworld blew up. Star Trek is in the modern era is not afraid to blow up planets. That they used to not really do that, but Romulus, of course, and Vulcan in the other timeline, the Kelvin timeline. And now Book's home planet, which I'm blanking on the name of, even though they said it 100 times in the episode, and I should remember it, but I don't. But now, here's where I am hoping they avoid falling into the same trap. I don't want this to be a season-long mystery. Ooh, what is this? Ooh, what's the gravitational pull? I would be fine if they just spelled it all out next week, quite honestly. And I don't want it to be... it would be better if it was like some sort of natural phenomenon, and rather than some mustache twirly villain who's behind it. I don't know. I don't want it to be a mystery box. I don't want it to be a mustache twirly villain. I don't know. They could spell the whole thing out next week, and I'd be fine with that. Or, they spell the whole thing out, and then something else is learned, like more layers of it are learned later in the season. That would be good. But not that we're sitting here wondering, oh, what is this? Discovery is just not that good at that. So That was definitely one of the downsides of season 3. Is even though I was happy that the burn didn't end up being tied to Michael Burnham, the answer still was underwhelming. So yeah, I don't want a mystery box. Let's just explain it next week. I'm totally fine with that. And then the what they have to overcome is like trying to, you know, figure out how they're going to solve this problem. That's fine. You know, I don't know. I was disappointed in that from the trailer because it looked like they were doing the same things that they did. We'll see. They could go either way. I'm worried that it's just going to be the same old, same old. I would like to see them do it a little differently this year. Oh, by the way, I have to give a quick shout out to Adira, who seems to be taking on the Tilly role this season. They were the nervous ensign. And I like that we get a little snippet of Gray because they did set up last year that he was going to try to, you know, get a body, and Dr. Colbert said that they would help with that, and they did kind of mention that, so that will be a subplot this year. So that will be interesting. It obviously won't be the main plot, but I think it can distract a little bit from whatever the main plot is. So curious to see where they go with that. I love Adira and I love Gray. So it's good to see that Tilly, you know, has moved up, and now she's kind of a little bit of a mentor for Adira, who's now filling that ensign role. And I love that they are an ensign now. I think that's great. Okay, so I think we can wrap up my review for this premiere of season 4. Overall, a pretty strong premiere, I would say. So now let me tell you how strong I think it was. I'm going to give you my rating for the episode. 1 is the lowest possible score. 10 is the highest possible score. And my rating out of 10 for Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 1, Kobayashi Maru, is an 8. Pretty strong 8. Strong premiere for an episode. Nothing that's going to blow your mind. And ultimately, what I think of this episode is really going to depend largely on what they do moving forward throughout the rest of the season. But I thought just looking at it on an island, that it is a pretty strong opening, and I'm going to give it an 8. So that is it for my review for Season 4, Episode 1 of Discovery. Please join me next week for my review of Season 4, Episode 2. Join me a little bit later this week as I will do a first quarter review of Star Trek Prodigy. If you like to see me rant and just see a lot of negativity, you can watch that. I don't like Star Trek Prodigy so far. So that is upcoming, and I will be covering the first 3 episodes of The Wheel of Time, which drop tomorrow. So if you want to follow all of this, all you gotta do is hit that subscribe button. So I will see you real soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye. Wait, hold on, don't go yet. I totally forgot. I said I was going to mention this later, and I totally forgot to mention it. The Enterprise reference was Archer Station. And apparently they even played the little Archer theme. I didn't actually catch that the first time around. But Enterprise reference, Archer Station, very cool. Okay, now you can go. Bye, see you next week.